Everyone walked past the crying little black 4-month-old baby in the baby stroller, until a black immigrant janitor picked him up at the end and cuddled him. Have you ever walked past someone in need? Someone invisible, forgotten, abandoned? Today I'm going to tell you about a woman who couldn't walk past. A woman who risked everything, her safety, her freedom, her future, for a child that wasn't hers. And what happened 5 days later? It changed both their lives forever. This is the story of Yetunde Okafor and the baby who became her salvation. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night in Newark, New Jersey. The streets were empty except for the occasional taxi cutting through the darkness and the distant wail of sirens painting the city's nightly soundtrack. Yetunde Okafor pushed her cleaning cart down the marble floors of the Riverside office complex, her rubber-soled shoes squeaking against the polished surface. At 43 years old, Yetunde carried herself with a quiet dignity that her circumstances couldn't diminish. Her dark skin glowed under the fluorescent lights, and though exhaustion lined her face, her eyes still held a fierce determination. She'd been in America for 6 years now. 6 years since she'd fled Lagos with nothing but a suitcase and a tourist visa that had expired 4 years ago. 6 years of living in the shadows, cleaning offices at night, sending every spare dollar back to her 2 daughters in Nigeria. Her girls, Blessing, 14, and Joy, 11, didn't know their mother was undocumented. They thought she was building a future for them. And she was one mop floor at a time. "Yetunde, you finishing up on 3? Crackled the voice through her walkie-talkie. That was Miguel, her supervisor. Good man. He knew her situation and never asked questions. Almost done, Miguel. Moving to the lobby soon. She emptied another trash can, her mind wandering to the video call she'd have with her daughters tomorrow morning. Blessing had a science competition coming up. Joy wanted new school shoes. Always something. Always needs she could barely meet. Yetunde wheeled her cart toward the elevator, ready to descend to the lobby for her final sweep of the night. The building had been silent for hours. Everyone who mattered had gone home to their families, their comfortable beds, their legal existences. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. And that's when she heard it. A cry. Faint. Desperate. The kind of sound that pierces straight through your chest and grabs your heart. Yetunde froze. She knew that sound. Every mother knows that sound. Baby. She abandoned her cart and hurried toward the entrance, her heart pounding. The glass doors of the lobby revealed the source. A stroller sitting alone on the sidewalk just outside the building. And in that stroller, a tiny form writhed and wailed. Yetunde burst through the doors. The November air bit at her skin as she approached the stroller. Inside was a baby boy, no more than 4 months old, his brown skin glistening with tears. He was dressed in a onesie that had once been white but was now stained and damp. His little fists punched the air as he screamed, his face contorted in desperation. Jesus Christ, Yetunde whispered, looking around frantically. The street was empty. Not a soul in sight. How long had he been here? Where were his parents? She looked at the building behind her, then back at the street. Surely someone would come back for him. Surely this was a mistake, a moment of confusion, a parent who'd stepped away for just a second. But the seconds stretched into minutes, and the baby's cries grew more frantic. Yetunde's hands trembled as she reached into the stroller and lifted the child. He was so light, so fragile. The moment she held him against her chest, his crying softened to whimpers. He was cold, shivering. How long had he been out here in the November night? Shush, baby. I've got you, she murmured, rocking him gently. Where is your mama? Where is she? She looked around again, desperately hoping to see someone running back, realizing their mistake. But the street remained empty. The city had abandoned this child just as completely as whoever had left him here. Yetunde's mind raced. She should call the police. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Find a baby, call the authorities, let them handle it. But Yetunde couldn't call the police. Her hands shook harder as the reality crashed over her. If she called the police, they'd ask questions. They'd want her information. Her ID. Her papers. Papers she didn't have. Papers that would get her arrested, detained, deported. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed would be over. She'd never see her daughters again. And worse, what would happen to them without her money? But this baby? She looked down at his face. He'd stopped crying now, his eyes, deep brown and impossibly trusting, stared up at her. His tiny hand wrapped around her finger. A couple walked past on the other side of the street. They glanced at her briefly, a black woman in a janitor's uniform holding a baby, and kept walking. Another person hurried by, head down, lost in their phone. A taxi slowed, the driver peering out, then sped up again. Everyone saw. No one stopped. They see you, baby, Yetunde whispered, tears streaming down her face. They see you and they keep walking. Like you're invisible. Like you don't matter. But he mattered to her. She couldn't call the police. But she couldn't leave him either. Yetunde made a decision that would change everything. Come on, baby, she whispered. Come with me. She carried him back into the building, grabbed her purse from her cart and left everything else behind. Miguel would understand. She'd explain later. Right now this child needed her. She walked 6 blocks to her apartment, a tiny studio in a building that should have been condemned years ago. With every step she expected someone to stop her, to question her, to accuse her. But no one did. At midnight in Newark, a black woman carrying a baby was invisible. Inside her apartment, Yetunde laid the baby on her bed and examined him carefully. He was malnourished, his ribs visible beneath his skin. The diaper was soaked through, probably hours old. He had a slight rash on his bottom. But his eyes were alert, watching her with an intensity that broke her heart. Who left you, little one? Who could do this? She had no baby supplies. Nothing. She'd left her mothering days behind in Nigeria. But Yetunde was resourceful. She always had been. She fashioned a makeshift diaper from a clean towel and safety pins. She warmed some milk, whole milk from her fridge, not ideal but it would have to do, and poured it into a coffee mug, feeding him slowly with a spoon. He gulped it down desperately, milk dribbling down his chin. Slow, slow, baby. Not too fast. You'll make yourself sick. After he ate, she cleaned him gently, singing to him softly in Yoruba. The same songs she'd sung to Blessing and Joy when they were babies. Songs about the moon, about mothers who loved their children, about God watching over little ones. The baby, she couldn't keep calling him the baby in her mind, needed a name even if temporary. I'll call you Emmanuel, she whispered. God is with us, because he must be, baby. He must be with both of us tonight. Emmanuel fell asleep in her arms at 2:30 a.m. Yetunde sat on her bed, this stranger's child cradled against her chest, and tried to think clearly through her exhaustion and fear. Her neighbor, Darnell Gibson, was a firefighter at Station 17 just 3 miles away. She'd lived next to Darnell and his wife, Patricia, for 2 years. They were good people. They invited her to their cookouts even though she always politely declined. Patricia brought her extra food sometimes. Darnell helped her fix her leaky faucet without asking for payment. Fire stations, she knew, had safe haven laws. People could drop off babies, no questions asked. If she took Emmanuel to Darnell, explained the situation, he could help without exposing her. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best chance she had. Yetunde didn't sleep that night. She held Emmanuel, memorizing his face, wondering about his story. Who was his mother? Why had she left him? Was she in danger? Was she desperate? Dead. When dawn broke through her thin curtains, Emmanuel stirred and whimpered. Yetunde fed him again, changed his makeshift diaper, and wrapped him in her softest blanket. At 7:15 a.m. she knocked on Darnell's door. Darnell Gibson was a bear of a man, 6'4" with shoulders that barely fit through doorways. But his face was kind, with laugh lines around his eyes that came from years of finding joy despite the horrors he saw on the job. He opened the door in his firefighter's uniform, clearly about to leave for his shift. Miss Yetunde? You okay? Kinda early. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the bundle in her arms. Is that a baby? Darnell, please. I need your help. Can I come in? He stepped aside immediately, concern flooding his face. Patricia, come here. Patricia emerged from the kitchen, a petite woman with silver-streaked hair and warm brown eyes. She took one look at Yetunde's face and rushed over. Sweetheart, what happened? Is that your grandchild? No. I found him. Last night. Outside my work. He was alone. Abandoned. Yetunde's voice cracked as she told them everything. The stroller. The empty street. The people who walked past. Her fear of calling the police. Her night with Emmanuel. By the time she finished, tears streamed down all 3 of their faces. You did the right thing, Patricia said firmly, gripping Yetunde's hand. You saved this baby's life. But I can't keep him. And I can't. You can't go to the police, Darnell finished quietly. He knew. He'd probably always known. I understand. Can you take him? To the fire station? The safe haven law. I'll do better than that, Darnell said. I'll take him to the station, file the report myself. I'll say I found him on my way to work. You won't be mentioned at all. Relief flooded through Yetunde so intensely she nearly collapsed. Thank you. Thank you. He needs someone to love him. To take care of him properly. I can't. You did love him, Patricia said softly, touching Emmanuel's cheek. You loved him when nobody else would. That matters, Yetunde. That will always matter. Yetunde kissed Emmanuel's forehead one last time, breathing in his baby smell, committing it to memory. Then she handed him to Darnell. Be safe, little Emmanuel, she whispered. You deserve everything good in this world. She walked back to her apartment and cried for 3 hours. The next 5 days were torture. Yetunde went to work, cleaned her offices, came home. She watched the news obsessively, looking for any mention of an abandoned baby. There was nothing. The city had swallowed Emmanuel's story whole. She called Miguel and apologized for abandoning her cart. He told her not to worry about it, said she'd seemed upset, asked if she was okay. She lied and said yes. She video called her daughters and pretended everything was fine. Blessing showed her the trophy she'd won at the science competition. Joy modeled her new shoes. Yetunde smiled and praised them and felt hollowed out inside. She'd done the right thing. She knew she'd done the right thing. So why did it hurt so much? On the afternoon of the 5th day, Yetunde returned home from buying groceries to find 2 people standing outside her apartment door. Her blood turned to ice. A black man in an expensive suit and a black woman in business casual, both carrying briefcases. They looked official. Important. Dangerous. Immigration. They'd found her. Someone had talked. Darnell? No, he wouldn't. But someone did. They always did eventually. This was it. The end. Yetunde's hands shook so badly she dropped her grocery bag. Oranges rolled across the hallway floor. The man turned toward her and she saw his face clearly for the first time. He was young, maybe late 30s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Yetunde Okafor? She couldn't speak. Could only nod. My name is James Whitmore. I'm an attorney. This is Keisha Banks, a social worker with Child Protective Services. May we speak with you for a moment? Not immigration. CPS. Somehow that was worse. They'd come for her because of Emmanuel. They tracked her down. She was going to be arrested for kidnapping. For not reporting. For... Miss Okafor, please breathe, Keisha said gently, stepping forward. You're not in trouble. We're here about the baby. I didn't hurt him. I would never. We know, James said firmly. We know you saved him. And we're here because of that. Yetunde's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the floor, her back against the wall, her world spinning. Can we go inside? Keisha asked softly. Somehow Yetunde got her door open. Somehow they all ended up sitting in her tiny apartment. These professionals in their expensive clothes, surrounded by her second-hand furniture and cracked walls. James pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Miss Okafor, the baby you found, the one you protected that night, his name is Isaiah. Isaiah Thompson. He's 4 months old. Isaiah, Yetunde whispered. She'd been calling him Emmanuel in her prayers. His mother is 17 years old, Keisha continued quietly. She's currently in the hospital, recovering from a severe mental health crisis. She's facing charges, but the judge is recommending treatment instead of jail time. She's very, very sick, Miss Okafor. What she did, leaving Isaiah, it wasn't rational thought. She wasn't in her right mind. Yetunde's heart ached for this girl she'd never met. 17. Just 3 years older than Blessing. Will she be okay? With time and help we hope so, James said. But that's not why we're here. Miss Okafor, when firefighter Gibson brought Isaiah in, he didn't say he found the baby. He told the truth. He said his neighbor did. Yetunde's heart stopped. He protected your identity, James continued quickly. He didn't give your name. But he told us enough. He told us about a woman who risked everything to save a child. A woman who couldn't go to the police herself but found another way. He told us you spent the entire night caring for Isaiah, feeding him, keeping him warm. He told us you sang to him. Tears streamed down Yetunde's face. The fire station has cameras, Miss Okafor, Keisha said gently. We saw you dropping Isaiah off. We've been looking for you for 5 days. Am I going to be deported? The question hung in the air like smoke. James and Keisha exchanged glances. That's not why we're here, James said carefully. Miss Okafor, Isaiah's mother is in no position to care for him. Her family, his grandparents, they're elderly and in poor health. They can't take him. We've been searching for the right placement. For someone who would love him, protect him, fight for him. He paused, leaning forward. We're here to ask if you would consider becoming Isaiah's foster parent. The world stopped spinning. Everything went silent except for the sound of Yetunde's heartbeat thundering in her ears. What? You saved his life, Keisha said, her eyes shining with tears. In more ways than one. He was malnourished, hypothermic. Another hour out there and he would have died. You didn't just find him, Miss Okafor. You chose him. Even when it put everything you've worked for at risk. But I'm not. Yetunde couldn't say the words. We know your situation, James said quietly. And we've been working behind the scenes. Miss Okafor, there's a humanitarian program. A path to legal status for people who've demonstrated exceptional moral character and service to their community. It's not easy. It's not guaranteed. But we believe you qualify. He pulled out more papers. We've already started the paperwork. We have firefighter Gibson's testimony. We have the hospital's report on Isaiah's condition when he arrived. We have documentation of how you cared for him. If you agree to foster Isaiah, we can expedite your case. We have immigration attorneys ready to represent you pro bono. Yetunde couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for me? Keisha reached across and took Yetunde's hand. Because you did something when everyone else walked past. Because you saw a child who needed help, and you didn't ask what it would cost you. You just acted. That's the kind of person who should be here, Miss Okafor. That's the kind of person who should raise children. But my daughters, I have 2 daughters in Nigeria. We know, James said, smiling now. And once your status is resolved, we can start the process of bringing them here legally. Will take time, Miss Okafor. Maybe a year, maybe 2. But if you agree to this, if you agree to foster Isaiah, we can make it happen. Yetunde looked around her tiny apartment. She thought about Blessing and Joy, about the video calls that never felt like enough. She thought about Emmanuel, no Isaiah, and his trusting eyes. She thought about the people who'd walked past him that night, and her own daughters who needed her. Could she do this? Could she take in another child when she was barely surviving herself? But then she remembered Isaiah's cry. She remembered his weight in her arms. She remembered the way he'd stopped crying the moment she held him. Some questions answer themselves. Yes, Yetunde whispered. Yes, I'll do it. The next 3 months were the hardest and most beautiful of Yetunde's life. James Whitmore wasn't just any attorney. He was the head of the Legal Aid Society's Immigration Justice Project. He'd spent 15 years fighting deportation cases and knew every loophole, every precedent, every sympathetic judge in the state. He worked on Yetunde's case personally. The humanitarian program he'd mentioned was real but incredibly selective. It required proof of exceptional circumstances, evidence that deporting Yetunde would cause extreme hardship and that her presence in America served the greater good. James built a case that would make a stone weep. He gathered testimonies from everyone at Riverside Office Complex. Miguel described how Yetunde had never missed a shift in 6 years, how she trained new workers and covered for sick colleagues. The building's tenants wrote letters about her kindness. The lawyer who'd found his lost files cleaned and organized, the executive whose daughter's birthday card Yetunde had recovered from the trash and delivered to his desk. He documented every dollar Yetunde had sent to Nigeria, proving she'd single-handedly funded her daughter's education and her mother's medical care. He got statements from Darnell and Patricia Gibson describing her character, her sacrifice, her courage. And then there was Isaiah. The pediatrician's report was damning. Isaiah had been severely malnourished when he arrived at the hospital. He had a respiratory infection from exposure. Without immediate intervention he would have died. But after just one night with Yetunde, one night of her care, her warmth, her love, he'd stabilized enough to survive. James submitted everything to the immigration court, along with Yetunde's application to foster Isaiah. And then they waited. Meanwhile, Yetunde's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Isaiah came home with her 3 weeks after their meeting. The apartment felt different with him there, smaller but warmer. He cried less than most babies, as if he understood that quiet was safety. But when Yetunde sang to him, his face would light up with the most beautiful smile. Patricia became her fairy godmother. She appeared regularly with bags of baby clothes, formula diapers. My grandson outgrew these, she'd say, even though they both knew she'd bought them new. Darnell installed a proper crib, painting it a soft blue. The money was still impossibly tight, but CPS provided a small fostering stipend. It wasn't much, but combined with her wages, Yetunde could manage. Barely. She video-called Blessing and Joy and introduced them to their new brother. They were confused at first, then concerned, then, when Yetunde explained everything, fiercely protective. "We're coming to help you, Mama," Blessing said, her teenage voice steady with determination. "Soon, my love, Yetunde promised, though she had no idea if she could keep that promise. Soon. The hardest part was Isaiah's mother. Crystal Thompson was still in the psychiatric facility, slowly recovering. The social workers asked if Yetunde would be willing to meet her, to help bridge the relationship between mother and child. Yetunde agreed, though fear gnawed at her. What if Crystal hated her? What if she accused Yetunde of stealing her baby? But when they met in the facility's visiting room, Crystal didn't look angry. She looked broken. She was so young, this girl with hollow eyes and trembling hands. She could barely look at Yetunde. I'm not a bad person, Crystal whispered. I love him. I do. But my head, it gets so loud, and I thought he'd be better off. Shoo, Yetunde said gently, reaching across the table to hold Crystal's hand. I know, baby. I know. Are you taking care of him? Is he okay? He's perfect. He's eating well. Growing strong. He smiles now. Crystal's face crumpled. I don't remember him smiling. I don't remember. I was so sick and everything was dark and I just wanted it to stop. It's going to be okay, Yetunde said firmly. You're getting help. You're getting better. And Isaiah is safe. That's what matters now. Will you? Crystal's voice broke. Will you let me see him? When I'm better? Of course, Yetunde promised. He should know his mother. You made him. You gave him life. That matters, Crystal. Even when you were sick, even when things went wrong, you gave him life. They cried together, these two women who loved the same child, separated by circumstances neither could control. 4 months after that knock on her door, Yetunde stood in an immigration courtroom. Judge Maria Santos was known as tough but fair. She deported thousands over her career but had also granted asylum to hundreds more. She listened to evidence, not emotions. James Whitmore presented their case methodically. Every document, every testimony, every piece of evidence that Yetunde Okafor was exactly the kind of immigrant America should want. The government attorney was young, ambitious, looking to make her name. She argued that illegal entry was illegal entry, that exceptions created dangerous precedents, that laws existed for reasons. Your Honor, we cannot simply reward breaking the law, no matter how sympathetic the circumstances, she said. If we grant status to Miss Okafor, we open the floodgates to. Counselor, Judge Santos interrupted. Are you suggesting that saving a child's life is not sufficient grounds for humanitarian consideration? I'm suggesting that there's a proper process and Miss Okafor circumvented it. She circumvented nothing, James said sharply. She entered on a valid visa and overstayed due to economic hardship. She's paid taxes through her employer's system. She's committed no crimes. And when she found an abandoned infant, she didn't ignore him to protect herself. She risked everything to save him. If that's not the definition of humanitarian grounds, Your Honor, then the law has lost its humanity. The courtroom was silent. Judge Santos looked at Yetunde. Miss Okafor, would you like to say anything? Yetunde stood on shaking legs. She hadn't prepared a speech. She'd been too terrified to even imagine this moment. Your Honor, I just want to take care of my children. All of them. The 2 I left in Nigeria and the 1 I found here. I'm not asking for anything I didn't earn. I work hard. I follow the rules. I try to be good. And when I saw Isaiah that night, her voice broke. When I saw him, I saw all of us. All the people who get left behind. All the people who get ignored because we're invisible. I couldn't let him be invisible. I couldn't walk past him like everyone else did. She wiped her tears. I don't know if that's enough for this court. I don't know if I deserve to stay. But I know Isaiah deserves someone who won't walk past him. And I want to be that person. I need to be that person. Judge Santos was quiet for a long moment. I've been doing this job for 23 years, she finally said. I've seen every kind of immigration case imaginable. I've seen people lie, cheat, and manipulate to stay in this country. And I've seen people who genuinely deserve to be here get denied because of bureaucratic technicalities. She looked at the government attorney. You're right that we can't reward breaking the law. But we also can't punish extraordinary moral courage. Miss Okafor didn't just save a life that night. She revealed something about her own character that no visa application could ever capture. Judge Santos picked up her gavel. I'm granting Miss Okafor humanitarian status under Section 240A of the Immigration and Nationality Act. She will be given a 2-year provisional green card, subject to review. If she maintains her employment, continues to foster Isaiah Thompson, and commits no crimes, this status will become permanent. Additionally, I'm recommending expedited family reunification for her minor children in Nigeria. The gavel came down. Court adjourned. Yetunde couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what had just happened. James grabbed her in a bear hug, lifting her off her feet. You did it? You're staying? Keisha was crying. Half the courtroom was crying. Yetunde collapsed into a chair, her whole body shaking. She was staying. She could bring her daughters here. Isaiah was hers, really, truly hers. She was home. 18 months later, Yetunde stood in the arrival terminal at Newark Liberty International Airport, holding Isaiah on her hip. He was nearly 2 now, a chubby toddler with an infectious laugh and curious eyes that saw everything. Patricia and Darnell stood beside her, both of them clutching signs they'd made, "Welcome home blessing," and "Welcome home JOY." James Whitmore had pulled strings, called in favors, and worked miracles to expedite the visa process for her daughters. It had still taken over a year of video calls and missed birthdays and Yetunde crying herself to sleep, but today was the day. Today her family would be whole. The doors opened and passengers started streaming through. Yetunde's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. And then she saw them. Blessing and Joy walking side by side, pulling small suitcases, looking around with wide, overwhelmed eyes. "Mama?" Joy screamed, dropping her suitcase and running. Yetunde fell to her knees as her daughters crashed into her, all of them sobbing and laughing and holding each other like they'd never let go. "My girls. My girls. My beautiful girls. We're here, Mama," Blessing sobbed. "We're really here." Isaiah, confused by all the commotion, started crying. Joy pulled back and looked at him, her eyes going wide. "Is this Isaiah? Our baby brother?" "Yes," Yetunde laughed through her tears. "This is Isaiah. Your baby brother." Joy reached out tentatively and Isaiah grabbed her finger. He smiled at her, that beautiful trusting smile, and Joy melted. "Hi Isaiah," she whispered. "I'm your big sister. I'm going to take such good care of you." Blessing kissed Isaiah's forehead, then looked at her mother. "Mama, you did it. You saved him and you saved all of us." "No, baby," Yetunde said, pulling them all close. "God saved us. I just didn't walk past." 3 years later, on a warm Saturday afternoon, Yetunde sat in the small backyard of her new apartment, a 2-bedroom in a better neighborhood, paid for with her new job as a hospital janitor with benefits and better hours. Isaiah, now 5, played in the grass with a soccer ball. Blessing, 17 now, was studying for her SATs at the picnic table. Joy, 14, was video calling her friend, laughing about something Yetunde couldn't hear. Patricia and Darnell were coming for dinner. They did that every Saturday now. They'd become family, the kind you choose, the kind that shows up. Crystal came by once a month. She was doing better, living in a group home, taking her medication, working part-time at a grocery store. She was still Isaiah's mother, still part of his life. Yetunde made sure of that. Isaiah called her Mama Yetunde, and Crystal Mama Crystal, and while it was complicated, it was filled with love. James Whitmore had helped Yetunde apply for full citizenship. The ceremony was scheduled for next month. She'd be taking the oath alongside 40 other immigrants, all of them with their own stories of struggle and sacrifice. Yetunde looked at her family, this beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect family, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Miss Okafor, this is Keisha Banks. I know it's been a while. I have a situation, a 3-year-old girl removed from her home. She needs someone special. Someone who understands what it means to save a life. Would you consider fostering her?" Yetunde looked at Isaiah laughing in the grass. She looked at Blessing and Joy, both thriving, both here. She looked at the small apartment that held all of them. It would be tight. It would be hard. It would mean more sacrifices, more struggles, more nights wondering if she had enough. But some questions answer themselves. "Send me the details," Yetunde typed back. "I'll make room." Because that's what you do. You make room. You don't walk past. You don't turn away from someone who needs you, even when it costs you everything. Especially then. Yetunde Okafor learned that lesson one cold November night, when everyone else walked past a crying baby and she couldn't. She wouldn't. And that choice, that single moment of compassion over self-preservation, changed everything. Not just for Isaiah. For all of them. 5 days. That's how long it took for a knock on a door to change Yetunde's life. But really, the change happened the moment she heard that baby cry. The moment she chose not to walk past. The moment she remembered that invisible people, immigrants, abandoned babies, all of us who live in the shadows, were not invisible to each other. We see each other. We save each other. And sometimes, when we reach out to save someone else, we end up saving ourselves. What would you have done? If you saw that stroller, that crying baby, that empty street? Would you have walked past? Would you have called someone? Would you have risked everything to do the right thing? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, if Yetunde's courage inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because there are more stories like this. More people like Yetunde. More moments when one person's compassion changes everything. Don't walk past those stories. Stay tuned. Stay connected. And remember, we're all just one choice away from becoming someone's hero. Or from needing a hero ourselves.